We celebrate the lives of women who has gone before us, our stalwarts, our leadership, as well as mothers out in rural areas raising her children. Women have always been in the background, but as time has evolved, women has been occupying leadership roles and have become role models for youth as well as for other women. As you know, today, we have a special topic being presented: diversity, equity, and inclusivity. The reason why this topic was presented is to create awareness in the workplace, as we are all from different cultures and backgrounds, and we have to work in the workplace together to achieve a common goal. We have invited a special guest and a renowned speaker who has extensive knowledge on the subject. She is the author of the book, which I think most of us know, A Journey of Diversity and Inclusivity. She has spoken on this topic and has presented on various national as well as international platforms and shared her knowledge on the following: why it is vital to open dialogue to understand cultural differences, and why with transformation, we can not only rely on a few individuals. Let me not spoil this by saying too much to you. And with further ado, let us give none other than Ms. Nene Molefe, who has been at our campus previously, a warmly, heartily UFS welcome, as she delivers a talk on diversity, equity, and inclusivity. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Junita, and thank you. Good morning, everybody. I always say technology is great when it works. I think all of us have been through that once in a while in our lifetime. So I'm going to be sharing with you what I've gathered basically in South Africa, in the world. I work across our continent and in Europe, America, and Asia. In fact, last month I was working in India. It's amazing that when you're outside of your own country, then you see how well we're doing, relatively. Because I think we need to compare ourselves to ourselves. But when you get to other countries, you find that, whoa, some areas that we thought we're lagging behind, maybe we are the same in the lagging somewhat. So, yes, so let me share then what I'll be covering today. Common language, basically around diversity, equity, and inclusion, and the concept of psychological safety. I think you know in the past 5 or so years, this concept has become much more prominent in organizations, and understanding the foundational models that are fundamental to embedding, I'll call it for short, DI, diversity, equity, and inclusion, and the experiences of inclusion and exclusion. And its impact on performance, and also where critical moments intersect with leadership decisions, and then hoping to add with a tip or so. So I want to share this with you, that it is risky to start any topic of DEI, especially since 2020, it has even become more pronounced. It's risky to engage in the topic of DEI without establishing psychological safety. And what do we mean by that? Psychological safety is a term amongst many other authors. Professor Amy Edmondson from Harvard speaks about psychological safety, and she defines it as a shared belief held by members of a team that the team is safe for interpersonal risk-taking. So a staff where you are in your various departments, where you're working within your immediate team, is it safe for you to challenge each other? Is it safe for you to raise issues about DEI or even issues of performance? They might have nothing to do with DEI. They might have a lot to do with the fact that the way you work together. Is there a culture of challenging one another? That you will not be punished or humiliated for bringing your whole self to work, to the workplace, asking questions and challenging norms. That's what psychological safety is supposed to be. So you might have heard about Project Aristotle, which is a project that was conducted by Google. Since Google did this project, we feel that they studied 180 teams. We can as well learn from them. Why reinvent the wheel? So they studied 180 teams, wanting to know the following, that what actually is a determinant of team performance, high performance in a team. And the predictor of success in a team. So after examining 180 teams, they came up top 5 things. So in ascending order, the impact of work was number 5. Impact of work, do we fundamentally believe that sorry, I'm working on 2 things. So when I press here, it doesn't come here, so don't worry about me. So number 5, the impact of work. Do we fundamentally believe that the work we are doing matters? That came up as one of the top 5 that people say that would lead to high-performing team. The 4th one, meaning of work. Are we working on something that is personally important for each of us? That matters to people. Structure and clarity. Are goals, roles, and execution plans of our team clear? Sometimes there are people who work in a team and your role is not clear, your job description is not clear, and today the boss says do this, tomorrow he or she says do that, that bothers people as well. So that came at 3. And then number 2, dependability. Can we count on each other to do high-quality work on time? If we are members of a team, can I depend on you? Can you depend on me? That we can do high-quality work. That came out. And top of the pops, number 1, psychological safety. That was voted by most of the 180 teams. Can we take risks on this team without feeling insecure, without feeling embarrassed, or afraid of being judged or labeled? Can I speak up? Can I challenge without fearing that I'll be labeled as a troublemaker or I'll be labeled as stupid or naive? So that came out as number 1. So that is why the last 5 or so years, organizations are really putting psychological safety on the table. Why am I combining this with DEI? Is because the topic of diversity, equity, and inclusion is emotive by nature. So you need to ensure that is there safety? Can we challenge each other without taking things personally? And the opposite of psychological safety is artificial harmony. When you look at that diagram, we don't want the extreme left. We don't want the extreme left. Neither do we want the extreme right. We do not want a situation where there's artificial harmony. Artificial harmony is total avoidance of conflict. And then on this extreme right, neither do you want mean-spirited personal attacks. It doesn't mean when we say there has to be psychological safety in our team, in our organization, therefore we move to the other side of the pendulum and challenge each other in a mean-spirited way. We are aiming for the green, we're aiming for the middle, and the middle is healthy, ideal conflict point. And you might wonder, are we inviting conflict? Wherever there are human beings, there will be some kind of conflict, but let it be an engagement that is healthy. So that's what we're looking for. The opposite of that, as I said, as artificial harmony, it is a relationship in which parties attempt to maintain a deceptive outward harmony as a camouflage. But inwardly, there's a sense of disharmony. Have you been in teams where when we are, maybe you know that your colleague takes things personally and you want to challenge them and you say, let me just focus on my area and not bother them. But one thing about artificial harmony, when you are driven by avoiding conflict, you actually create war inside of yourself. Think about it, even at home. If there's a conversation you need to have with your spouse, or with your parent, or your sibling, your child, you don't have that conversation, and it's an important one, does it go away? No. It develops horns, it becomes worse than last year, and then the day it comes out in the most embarrassing way. So it's important to note that when we are driven by conflict avoidance, we're creating something else that we also don't want. The team appears healthy because there is no robust engagement, but rather what we call a making nice culture, as a false sense of peace. There's peace just because we don't challenge. That is not peace. A false sense of peace results in accommodating unacceptable behavior and avoidance of accountability. Let's say I am in HR, or I'm in supply chain, or I'm in whatever department, and where I'm working, maybe I'm dragging my feet and it impacts your delivery, but you are not challenging me because we have created this false sense of peace. But the heat inside of you is growing. So why we are putting psychological safety on the table is that, in fact, psychological safety encourages accountability. It says, let's be accountable, but let's challenge each other with respect. So we were going to do an assessment of, but the computer is doing things to us, so we won't go there. Yes, so that's psychological safety. And why I'm saying it's important for us to talk about psychological safety when we're addressing the concept of DEI, it's because of the following. Firstly, a very nice definition, I'm sure you've heard about it, that diversity is like being invited to the party, and inclusion is being asked to dance. So you can invite me to your house to the party, and let's say I don't know anybody, I only know you as the host, and there's lots of people, and I'm somewhere in my corner there, I'm not being invited to the dance floor. So inclusion is being invited to dance. But then it doesn't end there. Remember, when you invite me to dance, I'm dancing towards your music, right? Belonging, you get to choose your song. Have you heard the concept that women have to be invited to the table? It's one thing being invited to the table, but do people even take your point? Do they even take your views? So you can invite me to the table, I can be there, and nobody ever listens to me. So if you want to complete this cycle, yes, invite me to the party, meaning let me join the organization as I'm recruited. When I join the organization, inclusion is that, can I be called to the dance floor? That I'm included, and then belonging. Can I also sometimes, it's nice to dance to your music, can I also sometimes give you my CD, it's not CD, reveals my age. Can I give you, what do you call it, flash something? Can I give you my flash drive so that you play my music as well? Because then I actually feel that I'm part of that. You know, one of my consultants got married a few years ago, and just to show how belonging important is, in the invitation, she said, you have to choose your favorite song. So we had, when we do RSVP, what is your most favorite song? So at the reception, it wasn't loads of people, like some of our African weddings. No, it wasn't loads and loads, it was a few tables. So at the reception, when you see the table that dances the most, you know that's their song. And they will really stand on their feet because they felt that they are part of the occasion. It's not like hiring a DJ who's playing 99% of the songs that you don't resonate with. So what they did, they ensured that each and every guest would hear their music. So it's very important to make people feel included. So belonging, you get to play your song as well over that. And then there are two models I want to share with you that are really important when we're talking about DEI. It's called the H3 model. I'm sure you've heard this model from different angles if you've been through different leadership development programs, which is the head, heart, and hands. At the head level, we have what we call intellectual buy-in, right? Intellectual buy-in, you have insight. That's where you deal with the what. Let's say in your department, you said, we need to transform, or we need to ensure that we have more diversity, and then targets, you have plans and targets. That's where strategies, policies, plans, and targets sit at the head level. It's important, but in my 24 years in this field, I've never seen a spreadsheet transform any organization. You can have all of that in a spreadsheet in somebody else's drawer. It will sit there unless you move from the head to what we call the heart, which is emotional buy-in. Emotional buy-in is where inclusion comes in. I can say it in my head that, I mean, this is Women's Month or whatever. Let's say I want more women. I want to close the pay gap, gender pay gap, whatever. I can say things as a leader. But when it comes to inclusion, is that which I'm grappling with in my head, that which I've written, I can even write it in a policy that we are not supposed to have gaps between genders or whatever. But the inclusion part is where I find a lot of work comes in, because now emotions live there, right? And then the third part is the hands, and the hands is behavioral effort. That's implementation. Let me do a test, a quick test. In the last 12 months, maybe 24 months because there was COVID, time for confessions, who, just raise your hand, who has received a traffic fine for speeding? In the last 24 months, we have angels. We have lots of angels in this. So no one has received a speeding fine. At least one. No, not unless the traffic cops are not doing their jobs, or we have very law-abiding people in this room. So for those who have received a traffic fine for speeding, let's say in those last 2 years, think about it this way. You passed your learner's license. Hopefully, you passed your learner's license. Everything, when it has that thing that says 80, you know that you're not supposed to exceed 80. When it says that 120, you know you're not supposed to exceed 120. But what happens when you drive under that bridge, you see a white car? What happened to your foot on the accelerator? It's like this, and then you slow down. You are a law-abiding person. And then after you pass, what happens? Again. Let's not pretend we haven't seen it. If it's not us, we have seen that, right? Once you've passed that car under the bridge, it's like, brrr. Do you know what that, just in the context of head, heart, and hands, you have bought the thing in your head. You know that safety is not just for you, but it's for people around you, okay? But at the heart level, you haven't internalized it. Because why should you slow down when there's a white car under the bridge? Why? You should adhere to the rules regardless of whether there's I don't know why I'm saying white car, a car, most of them are white. Where there's a white, why should you slow down when you see a car there? So if you look at it in the context of whether have we aligned the head, the heart, because at the hands level is what you do. To say, have I really internalized this? That which I'm doing regardless of who's watching, right? So the head, heart, and hands is important in everything that we do. That checks whether have I truly bought in or I bought in at the head level. So the second model, so it's an important model if you want to embed this. The second model that I want to share with you, I use the three-legged pot, African pot there, whether you cook mukhodi or poikikos, whatever you cook inside of there. If that pot does not have one of those legs, it will be like this. It will not contain what is inside. So if you want an integrated approach, a solid approach to DEI, you need to start doing work at an intrapersonal level. If you look at that middle leg, at the intrapersonal level, what do we mean by that? Is that I need to hold up the mirror. Before I point at a finger to say, maybe Junita is not doing this and this and this, she's sexist, she's whatever, am I being that which I'm saying she is not? Firstly, me. I need to do the work, okay, myself, because there's a lot that we need to do. And then the intrapersonal level, when we sit in a workshop, we engage, we challenge each other, that's at an interpersonal level. We also need to do work there. But then most organizations, this is where they stop. They take people through a sausage machine of workshops. And there's nothing wrong with workshops, I do that a lot. But if you stop there, you can as well not have done anything. Because after the workshops, have you heard people say, so what, after this good workshop? The so what is the second leg. When you look at that leg of at a systemic and organizational level, this is where you look at the policies, systems, procedures, and practices. Are the policies of this organization cutting edge? Are the procedures fair? Are they equitable? So are the practice, when you look at the practices, is there alignment between the head and the heart with regards to the practices? Let me give you a practical example. Let's say, what is your name, sir? Let's say Gerald and I work in the same department and we respect each other. We've done work at an interpersonal level. We are even buddies. We've done good work. And then tomorrow I discover that our boss pays Gerald 30% more than me. Ha. Do you know, it wouldn't matter how good of a buddy we are. I start looking at him that, how come you are the recipient of my unfairness? I want you to underline the following. Gerald did not pay himself. Gerald might not even know that he's earning 30% more than me. Gerald might not even agree with the fact that he earns 30% more. But, Oxalai, I look at him and I say, what are you doing? How come this organization favors you more than me? This is where we are saying, at an inter and intrapersonal level, it's for the employees to do the work, to say, let's respect each other, let's do this, let's understand bias, and I'll get to bias just now. But then the leg of policy systems, all the line managers, as long as you have somebody reporting to you, it's also your responsibility to say, are the policies, are the practices, are the systems, are the procedures actually applied the way is there fairness? That I cannot do if I am, I am not a victim. I am a recipient of the way policies are implemented. So this one leg, the organization has to come to the party. And then you have the other leg, which is the external stakeholder. Every institution has reputation. I need to be in a university where it has good reputation. I wouldn't want to be in a university where nobody respects it or whatever. So there's a lot that happens at external level. Expectations of potential students that might come and register at your university. Also, are you a force for social good? Are you seen as a good corporate citizen? So also the external is equally important. The internal as interpersonal, systemic, organizationally, and externally. Those three legs are important. If you just do DI in the middle, you will feel very frustrated because your efforts will not actually be felt. Okay, so those are very important foundational things. We talk about diversity, but we often don't really look at all the markers of diversity. The way I define diversity is all the layers. I use this, what I call the onion, that it sounds obvious, right? But we often ignore this, that there's also diversity of personality. You agree? I have kids. I have my daughter who's an introvert, and my son, who's an extrovert. Is like they are on extremes of this continuum. And especially when they were growing up, I started realizing that, my daughter who's older, she'll be busy talking to me about something that's important to her. I'm coming from work, I'm tired, I'm listening to her, and then my son walks in. Sure, those who've got kids who are really hyper, even the way he walks, he's always like that. And then he wants my attention, right? If I don't look, he says, Mom. If I don't look at him, he even says, look at me. Yeah, I'm standing with the sister. He couldn't be bothered. He wants me to look at him. Do you know what happens there? Over and over. Then, because he's so much like this, then I do look at him. he gets all the airtime because he says what he wants. For him, everything is urgent. He says whatever he wants until, there's a book, if you have this situation in your own family, there's a book called Quiet. There are about 3 books friends bought me about introverts. Because I'm not an introvert, I had to read to understand my daughter. There's one paragraph there that said, introverts find it draining to fight for space. I asked her, she says, yes. When your son is busy with his drama, I just walk away. Now imagine this, because I do a lot of DEI as well in private schools. If the teacher is an extrovert and your daughter, your son is an introvert, pray now, I'm telling you. Because what happens, what I hear there, that is why teachers themselves require a lot of training on DEI. So you find unfairness purely because I know there are extroverts, introverts, and ambiverts in the middle, but wherever you are on that continuum, it depends that the one who's in power, how are they engaging with that diversity? And then there's diversity of thought, ne? There's diversity of thought, and let me show all of them. There's diversity of thought. There's diversity of thought. And diversity of thought, that there's different perspectives, different interpretations, heuristics or ideating heuristics, the steps we take towards problem solving, whether the way people process information, the way you do it, the way he does it is different. And sometimes we want people to solve problems the way we think they must solve problems. We want them to think the way we think. Some people are more deductive in thinking, others are inductive in thinking. That's an area of diversity as well that we often forget. And then there's that blue bubble, then there's neurodiversity. Also, increasingly, there's an article by Harvard Business Review on neurodiversity, by the way, and neurodiversity basically talks about the variations in the brain. Parents, if there are parents here in the room who've got children with autism spectrum disorder, do you know that they will tell you that the gift of those children around pattern recognition, even around maths, but because the formal world of work doesn't recognize that, we then pathologize that and put it and ring fence it that is problematic, as opposed to look at that diversity within the brain as well. So it's a growing area. If you find it interesting, read a lot around neurodiversity. And then the yellow bubble is the one we talk about a lot. Diversity of age, sex, gender identity, sexual orientation. That's where we go often. And then the gray bubble, which is diversity of what we call acquired dimensions of diversity. No one is born married here. No one is born with a degree. No one is born with a child. You acquire these things as you go about your life. If you joined this university when you were single and you didn't have a child, and then 3 years later you get married or whatever, or you have a child, your lived experience will be different. Because when you are a father or a mother, it's totally different. So you are recategorized into another area of diversity because you begin to experience the functionings in the workplace differently. So we must never forget that as well. And then the outer layer, diversity of lived experience. And as we've said this, we mustn't forget that every country, every organization or institution has its pain points. The different workshops that I do all over the world, as I told you, I was in India, there are pain points there. I realized it's still, even now, colorism, it's serious, and gender. Serious pain point that you still find. In South Africa, we don't have to go, pain point is race, and gender-based violence. Those two things are serious pain points. Yes, others are also there, but pain points are those things that become more emotive, where the newspaper will pick up a lot. I did a workshop in Rwanda. Their pain point is ethnicity. Don't go there talking about the Tutsis and the Hutus. You have to tread carefully. Every country has its own. But if you think you will ignore pain points, and if you do the work, you'll know best what are the pain points in your own organization. So avoiding a conversation does not take it away, as I said it earlier. This is pain points. Eckhart Tolle said, whatever you fight, you strengthen. What you resist persists. That which you are avoiding finds its way of coming out. If you're suppressing a pain point, let's say in your department or whatever, there's a particular pain point. Let me give you an example quickly of I want to give you an example. I was listening to Radio 702 years ago, and the talk show host was John Robbie, and he was saying, you know, South Africans, everything, you like turning everything into race or politics. These two things are just your favorites. Today, I'm a bit fluey. It's a Friday. I just want us to talk about a light topic. Can we just talk about walking the dogs? I think I've been too long. I was driving to a client. I was laughing already. He explained to say, please, let's not talk heavy stuff. Caller number 1. After that whole explanation, caller number 1 says, yeah, John, I heard your explanation. All what I want to explain to you is that those dogs bark only at black people. So in South Africa, I don't care what radio station you're listening, there's just a way of, so if something is a pain point, it's like water. It finds space. So I was saying to leaders, if a pain point is gender in your area or LGBTQIY, you cannot suppress that. Somebody will find, even if it's not matching, somebody will find a way of saying, yeah, it's because you do this to LGBT. And you'll say, but how relevant is this? What you resist persists. I love what the former president of Zambia said, Kenneth Kaunda, that if you want to get hold of the honey, you must be prepared to be stung by the bees. Because the bees, we want a diverse, equitable, and inclusive environment. The bees, it doesn't come on a plate. That is why those, maybe people who are in transformation committees, change committees, or DI committees will talk about the frustration, because it's a difficult journey. When I wrote my book and told all those stories, at the end, there is victory, though, if you stay on, if you don't throw in the towel. Because you can throw in the towel, then other people come in and sort of restart the journey. But I like what Kenneth Kaunda says. When you start this journey, know from the beginning, you'll be stung by the bees. Part of the package, part of being a leader who wants to create an inclusive organization. So if you look at inclusion itself, because otherwise I forget to press there. If you look at inclusion itself, inclusion is the way an inclusive leader must be awake and alert to the following. Look at that diagram. Am I a part or am I a part? Am I apart from the team? Or am I a part of the team? That's part of saying, am I really included? So an inclusive leader needs to be aware of the way places and spaces are designed and structured, the way narratives are created and normalized, the way different symbols, images are presented, the profile and behavior of those with rank, with power, with influence in the system, the unwritten rules that are embedded in the culture of an institution, verbal or non-verbal messages of what is being rewarded and what is not. All of this culminates in whether people see themselves as belonging into an institution or into a team. So there are signs to show that is there inclusion. And if you don't know, the best engage with people. That is why we have engagement surveys. Engage with people. Ask them, what will inclusion look and feel like for you in order for you to perform at your best in our organization? And why is this so critical is that, do you know that a lot of research has been conducted, one by Professor Amy Edmondson, that exclusion causes the same chemical reaction in the brain as physical pain. If I'm experiencing at a repeated levels, I'm experiencing exclusion, my brain does not make a distinction as to is this socially or is this physically. It's like you're taking a knife and scratching me here. I often use the example to say, let me talk to parents in the room, moms, dads, uncles, aunts, that if your child comes back from school and says, you know, my teacher is excluding me, I'm forever in the D team of either rugby or soccer, whatever, and Mandla and Johanna in the A team, and I don't see the difference. Say your child says that. And their parents, I hope they don't exist in this room, their parents who would say, listen, toughen up, this world is tough, Boys don't cry, especially if it's a boy child. Boys don't cry. Don't come and cry here. I don't know where that thing comes from, of boys don't cry, because God gave all of us tears. When boys don't cry, can I tell you now, I do coaching. I'll be coaching a 44-year-old executive. He'll remember what their grade 9 teacher said when he was 15 years old. That he said, I'm a good for nothing, useless, this or this or this. So, and they cry a lot now, later. And they cry inside. So this thing of boys don't cry, please let's undo that. It's better if your child in front of you cries and takes it out so that you're understanding. So if your child says that and nobody listens at home, and then he goes back to school, faces the same coach, the same teacher, comes back home, nobody's listening, goes back, feels excluded. Where do you think the pain goes? Of that child? Because it's not written here, right? Inside. And remember the following. The coach might be right. That's not the issue. Maybe your child does belong, or yours or mine, does belong to the 4th D team. Maybe that's it. The issue is not that. The issue is when the child comes home and reports, and this research, by the way, is not just on children. I'm just using a child to connect it. When a child comes home and says, I have been excluded, I feel, they'll use different words. My teacher is a hater, or whatever they'll use. Can you spend at the most, 15 minutes of your time? Sit the child down. Allow them to say, in their own words, no matter how unglamorous the words come out of their mouths, in their own words, allow them to tell you why they feel excluded. It is so important. Allow them to tell. Don't put words in their mouth. Don't say, no, toughen up yet. Just allow, because by listening, research repeatedly has shown that just by listening to somebody who feels so excluded, at least 30%, you've already sent a signal to them that you matter for me to listen. You don't have to agree with them, but you have listened, you've allowed them. Sometimes we cut them. We don't want kids to explain, and that's where we go wrong. And let me tell you where we seriously go wrong, because this is what the research has found, that being on the receiving end of a social snub or exclusion causes a cascade of emotional and cognitive consequences. Social exclusion increases anger, anxiety, depression, jealousy, sadness. There's an exercise, if we didn't lose time, we were going to do it, but I can tell you now, if I were to ask you to think of an instance where you were personally excluded from something, it doesn't matter what, and I ask you to attach the feeling, some of your feeling words will be like this: anger, frustration, anxiety. When we do this exercise, there's a lot of toxicity that comes. What people feel, okay? It reduces performance on difficult intellectual tasks and also contribute to aggression and poor impulse control. So that same child that you are sending back to school is going to face the teacher. You want them to do well, straight A in maths or science or geography, whatever subject that they are doing. You want them to be great. Research says if kids feel, if people, not children, if people feel routinely excluded, this is what it does in terms of performance, the impact on performance. Dr. Leary and associates from Duke University in the US did a study, and they studied 15 cases of mass school shootings. And I know it happens more in the US. Do you know that of the 15 that he was studying, they found that 13 out of the 15 were victims of social exclusion. Just think back, when you listen to news, and you hear of these lots of mass school shootings, you hear somebody say, when they say this is the one who did it, a classmate, they say, he was so quiet. He was such a nice person. Or even a neighbor, he was such a dignified, quiet person. Quietness hides certain things as well, because if that pain that I spoke about goes inside, we don't recognize what exclusion does. It really is damaging. That people who routinely feel excluded have poorer sleep quality, and their immune system don't function as well. Never underestimate exclusion. If you have the power, if you have the influence, if you have something to make someone else's life easier, to make someone feel included, you are doing a great deal of service. Believe me, there's endless research that has proven that. Okay, so as part of that, and I hope you'll remember that should any child come to you, should any colleague say to you they feel excluded, just at least listen to them. You might be able, just by listening, you might be able to be of help. In this context, when we talk about diversity and inclusion, we cannot leave this big topic of unconscious bias. And what do we mean by unconscious bias? Unconscious bias is defined as hidden inclination or preference that influences judgment from being balanced or even-handed. There's a word judgment there. Yes, we have to judge. If I am interviewing, is it this candidate or this, I have to judge. Is it this one or this one who's better? So that's okay. But if my judgment is not even-handed, if it's one-sided, if it's that's, where we're talking about, and I'm not even aware, hidden inclination. And there's implicit bias. There's implicit where I'm not aware. There's explicit where I am aware. So, but it's also important to say that bias does not make us bad people, as crazy as that sounds. Bias makes us human. All of us here, if there are 60 people in this room, there are 60 plus 1 people with biases. We all have biases. Our role, how are we willing to surface our biases? How are we willing to allow people to give us feedback that, Nini, when you say this, this is how you come across, because on an ongoing basis, I might just be at a better level of being aware of biases, because that's my core business. I work with this every day. Your core business is something else. But I also have my biases on a constant basis. I say, how do I work through my biases? So the aim is to surface and interrupt our biases. This should not be an excuse, though, for those people who have explicit bias. There are people who are racist, they know it, who are sexist, they know it, homophobic, and they couldn't be bothered. We're not talking, I often say they need a different workshop. We're not talking about that. We are saying, let's say your biases, you are not even aware that they interfere with your day-to-day thing. I want you to do a quick test just to prove this point. And this, I would want you to say it after a count of 3. Please read loud. I want you to state the colors that you see as fast as you can. So after a count of 3, we all start. 1, 2, 3. Red, green, blue, yellow. Ach nee, wat? Asseblief. Hey, let me do this. Let me work here. It might help. So after a count of 3, let's start. Red, green, blue, yellow. Quickly. Yellow, red, green, blue. Blue, yellow. Okay, good. Let's do the next one. Also quickly. Red, blue, green, yellow. Yellow, green, blue, red. Green, red, yellow, blue. Okay, let's now do it faster because now we got the drip. Let's do it faster. Red, blue, green, yellow. Yellow, green, blue, red. Green, red, yellow, blue. Okay, let's go for it. Read the colors. The minute I heard red, I knew you got it wrong because I said, read the color, not the words, okay? So why were you faster in the first round and slower in the second round? Why is it? Anybody tell me? Why were you slower the second round? Huh? Yes. You had to re-look, right? Because, you use, this one was much easier. Red is red. The word red is written in red. But on the other one, the same instruction, read the color, but then it was a different story, right? This is because our brains work faster when concepts match. But when concepts don't match, our brains get confused, slow down, right? If you were to drive on Nelson Mandela Drive and you see a nun with a cigarette, I bet you're going to, you don't know them from a bar of soap, but you're going to look twice, ne? Because there's a stereotype mismatch. In our heads, we see nuns as these holy people. They don't drink, they don't smoke. I don't know who told us that, but and then when you see it, it does something. So when concepts match, they are stereotype consistent, but the brain is slower. when there's that inconsistency. That is why we encourage leaders to slow down, reflect, and interrupt biases to minimize this, right? And why is this important? You might, if you have spare time, if you haven't read it, there's a book by Daniel Kahneman that says Thinking Fast and Slow. He talks about what is called System 1 and System 2 thinking. System 1 thinking is by intuition and instinct. And he in his book, 95% of the way we do things by intuition, quickly, that's where biases come in. System 2 is where there's rational thinking, where you were saying, where you slow down to really look at what am I seeing, what am I saying, especially if we decide on people's careers as well. So we often say to leaders, focus on behaviors, not opinions. When we ask for opinions of people, we trigger what is called implicit associations. But when we ask for assessment of behaviors, we evoke conscious thought. Let me give you an example. If you say, let's say I've got a vacancy in my department, there was a person called Tsepo. Tsepo used to report to you, but now I have a vacancy, he's applying, and then I ask you, because you are my friend, to say, what do you think of Tsepo? Do you know when I just say, what do you think of Tsepo? That triggers implicit association, because the way I'm asking you, I used to work years ago. I used to work for Eskom. Yes, Eskom. And you know, we used to have what is called the war room of talent. And people would put pictures of people that leaders wanted to promote. And things that they would be saying, no, that one is lightweight. That one, just on the picture, and then some of us don't know. You know, there's a lot that we do to decide people's futures. So when you ask this, you are triggering what we call implicit association, because the answer might be indeed, that one is lightweight. Do you know that if I say to her, that one is lightweight, she cannot unhear, even if she's still going to interview Tsepo, she cannot unhear what I said. Especially if we are friends, especially if she trusts me, she will be looking for the lightweight in the interview. And because I dropped it, right? Especially of our own relationships, it is better to say, can you tell me what you've observed of Tsepo's abilities to negotiate tough situations? Not what do you think of Tsepo. If I ask you that, you are bound to slow down. You are bound to engage system 2. Because I'm asking you specifically, tell me what have you observed in his ability to negotiate tough situations? What do you think of Tsepo? I'm giving you a clean slate for you to go to town. He's lightweight, he doesn't fit the culture, he doesn't this and this and this. It's very important for us to know how we engage, especially as leaders, about people's futures. Ask for people for details. When you hear people talk about others, ask for details. What did you observe that made you think that? You are forcing them into system 2 because our brains are more into system 1. So because we deal with biases, it's very important for us to recognize this. So, and whenever again, and why I'm emphasizing it, because we know we've got cognitive biases, lots of them. And the different cognitive biases that you probably heard of, and there's more. I'm just, because I didn't have enough space in my slides, I'm just showing you these ones that are most common, okay? You've got confirmation bias, you've got cultural bias. Do you know there's beauty bias? It has been proven that men who are good looking, well built, tall, nogal, and women who are beautiful get paid more. As crazy as that, go and do research. I'm telling you, there is something about the brain that beauty does something to it. My daughter was teaching me that, Mom, it's called pretty privilege. You know, this thing. I said, okay, it has a word in the young hour. I didn't know about the pretty privilege. She said, yes, it exists, it's pretty privilege. But it actually, even in the workplace, that is why this pay gap thing is not only to say, are you black or white? Are you male or female? Are you disabled, or are you also looking beautiful or not? So, no, truly, you go check, you'll see how important it is for us to do these biases. And let me give you an example about cultural bias. Cultural bias means what? Assumptions we hold about a group based on our own cultural background that impacts our interpretation and perception of a group. There's this story of two guys who lived in London in a block of flats. One was Kenyan, one was British. They lost their dads. They lived on the same floor, lost their dads more or less the same time. So when they go to the graveyard, they meet each other there once a year and so on. The British guy will kneel down, put flowers. The Kenyan guy put the calabash with some African beer, put it there. And then one day, British guy came to this one to say, you always what is that thing that you are putting on your father's grave that you are always shaking and then kneeling down and doing this? And the Kenyan guy says, that's African beer. And the British guy, in a very this way, that when will your father wake up to drink that alcohol? And then the Kenyan guy says, you just don't worry. The day yours wakes up to smell the flowers will be exactly the same day that mine will drink the alcohol. Can you see what we call ethnocentrism? Cultures, if we judge each other based on our cultures, because I think putting flowers is better than, you're both talking to dead people, let's be honest, ne? It's the same, but because I'm judging you based on my culture, that's what sometimes we can be so stupefied by our ethnocentrism, by our superiority, by not even hearing ourselves. That if I judge somebody because in the vendor culture they do something that I'm not used to because I'm Tswana, we need to constantly check. This is what we call biases. They play around with our heads. And then the other one is called affinity bias. And affinity bias, what time am I finishing? Now. Okay, let me go to affinity bias is when, let's say you are in an interview, and then a young, what's your name? Muiponi. We interview for a position, and Muiponi comes in, and I'm in the panel. I'm one of the people sitting in the panel, and I'm chairing the panel, and Muiponi comes as the first candidate. In the middle of the interview, we've all experienced it. In the middle of the interview, I can see she's biting her tongue, she's whatever, she's really going through some challenges, she's tense, and then she reminds me of some of me when I was young. Ne? I don't know her from a bar of soap. Along the way, she mentioned Soweto, and I was also born there. So affinity bias kicks in immediately. Then I say, but Muiponi, relax. We've seen your CV, relax, just relax. I can even say, breathe. And then she breathes and recollects herself and carries on with the interview. After Muiponi comes another, say, can I ask your name? Yes, Alri. And I'm just playing examples. Let's say Alri comes as the second candidate. And also like Muiponi, there was some tension. So Alri doesn't remind me of me when I was young. Ne? Remember, I don't know both of them. So I leave him to fry in his anxiety. I don't do what I did to Muiponi. Ne? I don't even recognize that I favored her by creating that warmth, by looking at her, softening my face, smiling a bit, to someone where there's no affinity in terms of looks and culture. And it happens to all of us. It's a waste of time to argue that we don't have that. We have it. So what we need to do prior to an interview, we often say, talk a little bit for 10 minutes about possible biases so that you presence them and avoid them. Let me go to the last point. I'll skip these ones just to show you the one part. Will you give me 10 minutes? Because I skipped. So we started late a little bit. Ne? So why this is important, I want to show you this is very important. It's called the employee life cycle. Why this employee life cycle is important as leaders. Do you know that our unconscious biases can creep in at every stage of that employee life cycle? When we advertise for jobs, when we do that interview and the final hiring, when we do onboarding, performance management, succession planning, every step, mentorship, who I choose to mentor, who I don't choose to mentor, who do I sponsor, who do I present next to the people who matter, every step of the way, our unconscious bias comes in. And this affects people's futures and people's career. We just have to, all of us, admit that let's do work and ensure that we minimize unconscious bias. And when we talk, my last two points would be, when we talk unconscious bias, we need to remember this, that I'm sure if you are a fan of Twitter, I've decided to pause on Twitter. It can be so toxic. If you are a fan of Twitter, you've heard people talk about microaggression, micro this, micro that. So microaggressions, there are two subsections that you can look under microaggressions. One would be microiniquities, ways in which individuals are either singled out, overlooked, ignored, or otherwise discounted based on unchangeable characteristics of who they are. If you discount me because I'm this age, I'm not 28 years old, this is my age. If you discount me, it doesn't matter what skin things I can use, I remain this age. It's unchangeable. If you discount me because I have this skin, I can use whatever creams that people use, I remain black, right? So sometimes and I repeatedly go through that because of who I am. And micro insults, I'll give you examples. Micro insults are called everyday slights, indignities, put downs for people, marginalized groups that experience on a day-to-day basis. Let me give you examples of, I'll put all of them up so that I don't waste time. So examples that we get from our workshops, where we've done full-on workshops around micro-iniquities. If we start with this one, say Mwiponi says something in a meeting, and then, we go around and, somebody's chairing the meeting. So, oh, okay. Go around, and then it gets to Peter. And Peter says the same thing. And the boss says, wow, I like that, wow. Who can run with that? Who can? And then Mwiponi said it, in the same room. When Peter says it, or Mandla, whoever, says it after her, all the oohing and the eyeing that are coming after, they are attributing it to that person. Mwiponi is still in the room. And it's almost like she said nothing. Ne? So micro-iniquities, there are people who go through this repeatedly, who are being overlooked. If you look at the definition of micro-iniquities, who are being overlooked, looked down upon, whatever, because of just who they are. Their biases kick in. That no, this one, maybe it's a thing that a male can contribute better. Maybe it's a thing where a white person can contribute better. Or our biases all the time. And another one, let's say there was in your department, something important is being presented, people are engaged and all that, and then person B stands up. That's when people remember to check their emails, and they check their phones because, this one is not important. They even check. Do you know, I've seen even people sit like this just to show that, man, you are not there. You might think I'm exaggerating. We get these things from the individual interviews, from the focus groups that we conduct, or this one, a mistake. One person makes a mistake, and the leader says, wow, it shows that you are trying when you make a mistake. And then I make a mistake. It's like I am the mistake. Other people's margin of error is this much. Some's margin of error is this much. So, and remember, one thing about micro-iniquities that's critical to mention, it's difficult to self-advocate. Can you picture Mwiponi saying, hello, you're stealing my point? No. At that time, she goes right inside. What's wrong with me? What did I do? Why are they doing this to me? So it's very difficult to self-advocate. I shared the last time I was here that when in 2018, I presented at a talent conference in San Diego. It's a big ATD conference, those who've been. And one of the keynote speaker was President Barack Obama. He was asked to talk about the nuggets when he was the first round president. And then some of the nuggets he shared, I was surprised. They say exactly the same experience. He says when he got to the White House and he was doing his rounds, staff rounds, meeting new staff, the women then told him that we are being overlooked, we are neglected, blah, blah, blah. And he said, I'm not here to come and be a savior for women. I felt, ouch, you know. He says, what I want to see, if you say something and your point is ignored, when it gets to another woman, even if it's 15 minutes later, she must say, that point that Muiponi mentioned, I would like to add to it. He was saying, once you make it real and you presence it, you show people that it's not fair that somebody, I was in the same meeting myself, it's her point, and you say, I would like to support the point that Muiponi said. He said, do that first, I will then support you. You need to do the work yourself. I never thought of that. But what is important, it doesn't only have to be done by women, by the way. Everybody can take on that role to actually say, let me attribute this point to where it belongs. Another one, people who are interjected, you are talking, somebody cuts you in the middle because they think they know what you want to do, they finish your sentence, they want to listen to someone more important. Okay, I've heard, I'll just skip the other one. Confidence. Let's say you're going to present, you've been working hard on this presentation, and a boss says to me, wow, Nini, break a leg, I know you're gonna do it. All the best for your interview. And then when it's you, he says, are you sure you are, sometimes we even do it to our kids, right? Child number one, I know you'll do it. I trust you, I believe in you. Child number two, have you really prepared? We do things, even as parents, right? So confidence and doubt that we are planting to those either who look up to us. And then during COVID, as I said, that what came in was WhatsApp. We get the most complaints from WhatsApp. When teams go on WhatsApp, you are posting something, a very important, highly charged topic, and then you decide to also post. And then there's deafening silence. Then you go back to your post. You check, you say, hi man, but it was in line with, I get you're on your own. You're saying, but it was in line with what everybody has said. And then you check, should I delete it? If I delete it, they'll see that I've deleted it. That's the inner dialogue. It will be more embarrassing if I delete it. And then you're sitting, I'm hoping somebody says something. I'm hoping somebody, and while there's that deafening silence, then somebody who is amongst the popular one says something and everybody back, people go through things. And this is a new one. It's a post-COVID problem that we got around micro-inequities. That is why, I like Maya Angelou when he says, people will forget what you said, people will forget what you did, but will never forget how you made them feel. As much as we like thinking that don't wear your heart on the sleeves, feelings don't matter. Feelings matter. For all of us, feelings do matter. When you are made to feel you are nothing, it will show in the way you think. And then the macro insults, if you are born in this country long enough or lived here long enough, you avoid saying you people, your people. Ne? It just presses triggers, and just avoid it. Because it has a whole lot of history of labeling. Or I've heard a supervisor saying, the girls in my team. Which professional woman would like to be called a girl? And I remember that manager saying, you're making life tough, man. They don't mind. They don't mind maybe because of power dynamics. It's like when a manager says a sexist joke, a racist joke, homophobic, then people laugh. The laughing is not always laughing at the joke. It's laughing at the power. But who's saying the joke? I have to laugh along. So sometimes don't misinterpret a laugh. Sexist jokes, homophobic jokes, those things should not have any space in the workplace. Or someone was surprised that I said it is a micro insult to call somebody non-white, although it's a term we all grew up using, because I'm not a non-anything. Imagine if I say, this non-woman here, you are all going to say, why are you calling him a non-woman? Because you cannot negate me and call me with a negative term, right? But we grew up using this term. Now we are learning that nobody is a non-something. It's like you're a mistake, ne? If you are non-somebody else. But because we were not dialoguing and not talking about these things, and you don't raise this thing when you are angry, you raise them to educate one another, to say this is how, I've heard somebody says you are sharp, you sound sharp for a pregnant woman. I don't know, when you're pregnant, your brain goes to dry cleaners or whatever. What happens? Or you are better than other blacks. You know, things that we just throw in. But I believe in giving feedback right there. Just give feedback constructively to say, you know, when you do this, this is what it does to me. Then that is how we are learning. Or people who are introduced to an openly gay couple in 2022, there are still people who ask, who's the man in the relationship? Do you know there are people who ask that? First of all, it's none of your business. Nobody is asking you in your home. It's a microaggression. You don't ask such questions. But again, at least if I know, if I grew up, you know, just throwing in those terms, if I give you feedback, then tomorrow you know that that's a microaggression. You can ask somebody who's the man in your relationship. It's not on. Last slide. What should you do? One, those who haven't, commit to, if you want to check your own biases, because really these are real, commit to taking the IAT. It's called the Implicit Association Test. It's free in the internet, offered by Harvard. Don't just take any other. Baya donkey. No, let me do all of them so that I'm done. This is the last slide. So, implicit association test. So it will tell you can measure yourself. If I want to see how biased I am on race, on sexual orientation, on gender, on age, on body shape, or whatever, take that test. You will be shocked. In the secrecy of your laptop screen, it will give you your results. You don't even have to share them with anybody. You can just look at them. It compares you with other people. Very important test for you to test. And also intent versus impact. Let's say somebody, to me, I've been a recipient of a micro-iniquity. You said something to me that was racist or sexist or whatever it is that represents me. So the tip that we have, there is something called intent versus impact. Do you know that all of us, we judge ourselves based on our intentions, all human beings, but we judge other people based on their actions and their words. But when it's me, I want you to judge me based on my intention. You're not inside of me, you don't know my intention. So we say intent and impact are different. So if somebody said something to me that was sexist or whatever, first, a tip, I'm the recipient. I give them benefit of a doubt, but give them feedback. To say, you know, when you say this to a woman, this is how it comes across. I give them feedback, benefit of a doubt. Their role is they need to own, underline the following, very important, own the impact of what they said. They shouldn't say, man, you know, I didn't mean it. No, own the impact and be willing to listen. And the third role is the role of the observer. Let's say the three of us are friends. We are hurling some sexist comments towards him. I cannot say my mouth was shut. It's those two. I am with them. The power of proximity. They are my friends. I am complicit if I say nothing. So I also have a role as an observer. So the recipient has a role. The exhibitor has a role, the observer has a role. If we were to all act in our roles, we will go somewhere in terms of creating an inclusive culture. Lastly, begin at home. When your child runs around and says something about someone who's different from them, my son is sick and tired of me. He says, Mommy, don't workshop me all the time. But when he says something about a girl at school or whatever, and I feel that that's a microaggression, I bring him back. And I said, what? I don't wait for 3 months to say, you know, 3 months ago this, no, now, to say, when you say this, this is what it does. We have a problem with gender-based violence because it starts with words and normalizing words that we don't challenge. As you go up with that pyramid of violence, nobody wakes up in the morning saying, I'm going to kill my girlfriend. It's because they normalize that they've been going up the ladder. When you get to that apex, which is murder, you don't jump. You don't just go there. It means you went through, and it was easy for you to see a woman as a subject, as whatever. So it's important for us to have a role to say, challenge it inside your home. When your spouse, when your dad, when your whatever, everybody who says something and you feel that, nip it right there. That's the role that we can play to society. Before I get into trouble, let me stop here and hope that there's something that you'll take. The other ones I think are straightforward. There's something that you can take with you. Please remember to be someone who's inclusive. Remember to check it at home. Remember to give feedback. And remember to understand that microaggressions do matter to people. Thank you very much.
Could we open the floor for any questions for Nene, please? Anyone want to ask a question? Sipho, nothing virtually?
There's one here.
Okay.
It's not so much a question, it's actually a request. I've learned so much from this the whole time. I'm sure she even saw I kept nodding and agreeing. There's so much that I think most of us in the room can relate to. Can you please bring her back again? Because I think this was amazing.
Can I say, not that I'm creating work for myself, but can I say, you know what's important? It's actually to go through an experiential workshop, to go through, you know, this is theory. I even feel it in my head when it's just a talk. But what would help if they call me back? I would propose that something like maybe 4 hours, we'll do a mini workshop so that like that flip chart I meant for us to do some exercise, you'll remember more when you actually participated in an exercise, so yeah.
Sorry. Yes, here in the corner.
Where?
This side.
Oh.
Thank you very much. I actually very much enjoyed your presentation. I think my question is mainly based on, I think, the unconscious biased part. But especially on the side, not necessarily the receiving. Let's say someone is biased and as a result, I'm the one who benefits from it. For example, I'm the good-looking one, well-built, you know, and as a result, I get something knowingly that I was biased because another one looks a certain way. If I know about that it happened as a result of that, is there something that I could do, for example, to say there was no, and how do I go about it to say there wasn't really fairness in this? I don't even think there was much consideration between the two. You just picked me because I'm clean, I don't have tattoos maybe running around my arms, whereby the other you just automatically disqualified because you said you look this type of way.
Yeah. Do you know, when I spoke about what we tend to do in the workshop, there's a module called Rank, Power, and Privilege, right? If you take, because all of us have some amount of privilege. If you were to take me, I'm a black, cisgender woman who's heterosexual, right? Just a few of my labels. If I were to put another woman here who is also black, but who's transgender, which is the opposite of cisgender, who's transgender or somebody who's who has physical disabilities or from the LGBTQ community, do you know that they will experience life double? That's why we talk about intersectionality. They are going to experience, and if I'm experiencing unfairness because I'm black and I'm a woman, they will experience that, plus this, plus this, plus this, right? So all of us have to say, where do I have privilege? Where do I have privilege? And how do I use my rank, my power, my influence and privilege to ensure that I co-create an inclusive culture? So we have exercises that make people with privilege to actually recognize that here I have unearned privilege. If there's a woman in a wheelchair, she didn't raise a hand to say, I want to be born like this. I didn't say, can I be born heterosexual? Can I be born able-bodied? It's unearned. The fact that people respect me because I did nothing to do that. So in the module on rank, power, and privilege, it is very important for people who've got unearned privilege to first of all understand it, acknowledge it, and engage with people in such a way that there's an understanding. Often nobody wants you to throw away your privilege. I mean, nobody can say to me, because I'm able-bodied, you have to be like me. No, but the way I interact with people is my understanding such that I make everybody know that there is something called unearned privilege, and that the fact that I studied, I went to university and all that, that I did my hard work. But within my hard work were other things that were unearned. So in that module, we do exactly that. We say, can we own parts of our privilege where we have, so that when we co-create, we don't make people feel that you are where you are because you are lazy. Sometimes we do that. Good.
Thank you. Mine is also just a comment adding on what she said. I'm already practicing. Thank you very much for the presentation. I want to make a suggestion based on what she said to HR specifically, because some of us are part of the South Campus where we are now undergoing what we call multi-campus model.
Okay.
I think this kind of a training would be more relevant to colleagues at South Campus, because some of them, as we have talks, we feel like we are being moved from one space to another because we are not wanted, you know. But then if you undergo such a training, then you realize, oh, okay. And then my second suggestion would be, it's all nice and good when, as people on the ground, attend such trainings, but it becomes a problem because the senior managers are not part of them. So if HR can also find a way to include senior managers, our line managers, to be partaking in such activities, it would be highly appreciated. Thank you.
Good. Thank you. Thanks, everyone.
Okay, I'll call you up again. Thank you so much, Nene. I think just from an HR perspective, there are just key points taken from this talk. I think what stood out for me was psychological safety. And is it safe when we have to raise issues? Can we speak out on diversity, inclusivity, and specifically belonging? And then also with diversity, inclusivity, and belonging, are we looking at all the markers of diversity, or are we only looking at diversity? Then lastly, the good news is that all universities experience the same pain. And lastly, what is good, what Susan actually mentioned this morning, that we are all, that South Africa is actually doing well compared to other countries. Thank you so much. And lastly, I would like Talisha to do the vote of thanks. Sorry.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. It gives me a great pleasure to present the vote of thanks to the following people on behalf of the Human Resources Department. I'll leave Ms. Nene Molefe for last, if she doesn't mind. I just want to take the opportunity to thank Grand Room Design, Ulrich Venter and his team, for the great stage setup, the draping and the flowers. So they did a very good job. I love the flowers, by the way. And then also Star Sound and the team to assist with the sound. And then Roestel and the team for assisting with the recording. ICT service, they are also here to assist with the setup. And we had some technical issues earlier, but that was sorted out. Thank you to everybody at ICT. And then Coffee Inn. Coffee Inn, thank you to Ilse and the team for the refreshments that they served this morning, and also the venue bookings. Specifically, if I could also mention Ronald Sinra for assisting in the venue bookings, and then not last, but second last, to everybody who contributed to the success of today. I don't want to mention any names because there's a lot of people who contributed to today's session, but thank you so much. And last but not least is I just want to give this to Ms. Nene. She can come and receive this, please. Just a small token of appreciation. Thank you so much. I've learned a lot.
Thank you.
It was very inspirational, and I think we would like to welcome you back.
Yeah, thank you.
But yes, there's a lot of things that stood out for me, and I'm sure a lot for you as well. But the thing that stood out most is the beginning at home.
Yeah.
So thank you so much for that.
Thank you.
Okay. Last but not least, you are also invited to take photos with Ms. Nene. If you are available to do so, I know we ran out of time a bit, but you're more than welcome to stay for photos. So thank you for being here as well, and enjoy the rest of your day. Okay.